Tonight, a second wave of explosions tearing through Lebanon. Yesterday, it was pagers belonging to Hezbollah members. Today, it's walkie-talkies detonating simultaneously, according to Lebanese state media. This blast at a funeral today for a Hezbollah member killed in yesterday's bombings. The Lebanese army blowing up one walkie-talkie in a controlled explosion outside a hospital in Beirut. The Iranian-backed militants unable to stop what U.S. officials tell NBC News is a vast Israeli covert operation, targeting Hezbollah's personnel and its communications network. Lebanon's health ministry says at least 14 people were killed in today's blasts, on top of the 12 killed yesterday, 2 of them children. And hospitals struggling with an influx of more than 3,000 injured people.
Doctors involved in treating the wounded in the pager attack say they saw many injuries to the face, where people were looking directly at the device, as well as the side, where it was clipped to a belt or in a pocket.
Israel refusing to say if it was involved. But tonight, the defense minister says the war is moving to a new phase, with troops shifting from Gaza to the fight against Hezbollah on the Lebanon border, as Israel vows to make it safe for thousands of its civilians displaced by the fighting to finally return home. The New York Times, citing 2 officials, says Israeli agents planted tiny explosives inside the pagers, which detonated after receiving messages that appeared to be from Hezbollah leadership. Many of the destroyed pagers bear the logo of Taiwanese company Gold Apollo, but that firm says the specific model was made by a different company in Hungary. Hungary's government saying the company is an intermediary with no manufacturing or operational site, meaning it's still not clear where in this shadowy supply chain these consumer devices were turned into deadly bombs. Former FBI official Clint Watt says this was a highly sophisticated attack.
The key point of all of this is this was a very coordinated attack against a very specific target. It's not something to be easily undertaken just by an individual or just by random groups of criminals.
With Hezbollah now vowing revenge, Israeli forces on high alert after a chain of blasts that could be the sparks for all-out war.
And Raf, what are we to make from U.S. comments so far that they were aware that something was happening?
Well, Lester, it's probably not a surprise that Israel wouldn't share the specifics of an operation this sensitive. 2 U.S. officials tell NBC News they were aware Israel was planning something in Lebanon, but they were caught off guard when those pagers started exploding, and they stress the U.S. was not involved in this attack. Lester?
All right, Raf Sanchez tonight, thank you. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.